Fantasy football quarterbacks, sometimes these guys can get overlooked. Sometimes people want to fade them, draft them late, do the whole late round quarterback strategy. But today we're going to be breaking down our top 15 quarterbacks for 2023 fantasy football, talking about some of the guys that we're willing to spend, up on, willing to spend early round picks on, and kind of the range of the draft that we're willing to do so. Break down their outlooks, talk about who has, the highest upside. All that stuff will be covered in today's video. So if you enjoyed at any point, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Danny, how you doing today?
Doing well. And yeah, as we know, in terms of real life NFL football, the quarterback position is the most important position in the entire NFL. And we should start treating our fantasy lineups like the quarterback position matters. Because for the longest time, like you said, people wanted to fade the top quarterbacks, late round quarterback strategy. But to put it bluntly, these guys at the top are just separating themselves too much at this point, that I do think that early round quarterback is a much more viable strategy than what your dad was rocking in 6 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. We got these anchor quarterbacks that can really, really put some fear into your opponents, help you carry a team. So let's not waste any time. We're going to break down the top 15 quarterbacks in tier list format right now. All right, so we are now into the tier list. You guys can see kind of how we have our tier structured. Guys that we're willing to spend top 3 round picks on, guys that we're more so looking at in the 4 to 5 round 4 to 5 range, then kind of like in the mid round 6 to 8, and then more later round quarterbacks rounds 9 to 11. So I'm going to start it off with my quarterback one. I'm not sure if you have the same QB one as I do. I don't think you do. My quarterback one is Josh Allen. The reason I have Josh Allen quarterback one is because when we talk about these like league winning ceilings, and if you're drafting a quarterback in the top 3 rounds, like he has to be a bona fide stud, every week starter, putting up 20, 22, 23, 25 points per game. And it usually comes from one of 3 paths that you get one of these like monster ceilings out of these quarterbacks. It usually comes from like premier passing numbers, like what Patrick Mahomes kind of represents. Sometimes it comes from like premier Konami code rushing, like what Jalen Hurts would represent. But I think Josh Allen is the only quarterback in fantasy that has a great combination of both factors, to the point that he could put up a 5,000-yard passing season and also 800 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns on top of a monster touchdown and passing yard season. So for me, Josh Allen is kind of like the best of both worlds. Yeah, you could go to one extreme with Patrick Mahomes or the other extreme with Jalen Hurts, but I like Josh Allen as a guy that can get it done in multiple facets. And when I think you talk about who has the highest percentage of their team's offensive touchdowns, you could definitely point to Josh Allen being the guy that they use as the primary red zone back, as well as, anytime they're throwing the ball, he's getting points.
Yeah, I mean, he's my quarterback one as well. Before his UCL injury really affected the second half of his season, this is a guy who was the quarterback one in fantasy. He is like a prime Cam Newton with a 35-plus passing touchdown ceiling. Obviously, Cam Newton did that 1 year. I think it's become the expectation for Josh Allen. He's thrown over 35 passing touchdowns each of the last 3 years, on top of the last 2 years, rushing for over 700 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. He is basically the combination of the other 2 guys at the top. There's 4 in this tier for me, but the next 2 guys on my list, he's like a combination of them, with the rushing effect of the one guy and obviously the elite passing ceiling of the other guy. So with Josh Allen, I don't really overthink it. If he's there at the end of the second round, early third round, he's going to be on my fantasy football team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes a ton of sense why you would have Josh Allen QB1. I don't think it's consensus. I think Patrick Mahomes will probably be the consensus QB1 for most people, even, more so in rushing heavy leagues where there's kind of like rushing bonuses or whatever. Jalen Hurts might be the favorite. In my home league, for example, this year we're changing it so that, quarterbacks get bonuses for 25 plus completions in a game and also going over 300 passing yards. Maybe you lean a guy like Patrick Mahomes in that type of format, but we also do have still, the high rushing bonuses as well if you rush for a 40-yard touchdown or a 40-plus yard run, which kind of leans you towards Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. So it's all kind of a balance. My quarterback 2 is Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you have Jalen Hurts quarterback 2, but I have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback 2. It's really I feel stupid about last year kind of being like, oh, Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to fade him a little bit because he doesn't have Tyreek Hill anymore. Does he still have the same ceiling? He's the best quarterback in the world, so he absolutely still had the same ceiling, and we kind of looked stupid, or at least I looked stupid for fading him last year. So for me, Mahomes, no matter who he's throwing to, no matter what his weapons group is, he's going to be a locked and loaded 4,500, 5,000 passing yard, 35 plus touchdown, absolute lock. And he has the ability to rush in a couple touchdowns here and there as well. So for me, Patrick Mahomes, if you're talking about how to start off a fantasy draft among your home league buddies in a great way, missing on your early picks can be a problem. And if you're more risk averse at the beginning of your drafts and you take, let's say, a Jamar Chase at number 2 overall, who's, a very clean projection, and you want to pair him up at the end of the second round with Patrick Mahomes, knowing that you have a locked and loaded, guaranteed difference maker at your position, I can't fault people for doing that.
No, I can't either. He's my quarterback too as well. Very, very lockstep so far with our top 2 options. And yeah, I felt stupid last year. I'm not gonna lie. I think I had him like quarterback 5 or quarterback 6. We were both very, very low on him in terms of consensus. And he just proved that he's the best player in the NFL. And that will not be an issue for me moving forward. I don't care if he's throwing to me, if he's throwing to you, if he's throwing to fucking, Juju Smith-Schuster again, who's terrible in his own right. Like, Patrick Mahomes is the truth. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the world. And I was kind of referencing to you off camera before we started recording this video, but in games where he had access to his wide receiver, when I mentioned the name Juju Smith-Schuster as a joke, but when in games where Juju Smith-Schuster was fully healthy, Patrick Mahomes scored nearly 26 4-point passing touchdown points per game. That's absurd, man. Like that's a legitimate, like, Jalen Hurts level output without the Jalen Hurts 13 rushing touchdowns, without the Jalen Hurts 700 rushing yards, whatever he rushed for. And we'll get into Jalen Hurts in a second because all of those pros still exist, which is why he's going to be one of these top valued quarterbacks in fantasy football. But I think that just kind of shows the brilliance of Patrick Mahomes, where without having that rushing floor that some of these other top guys has, his elite passing ceiling is like unlike any other quarterback in the NFL. He can legitimately throw for another 50 touchdowns. And I don't think anybody would be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, not that this is a massive concern with Jalen Hurts, but you do get into the topic of conversation of like, oh, he really has only had 1 year of being an elite quarterback. What happens when these teams get more tape on him and that kind of stuff? I don't think it's going to be a huge factor for Jalen Hurts. I think he's still going to have his same, 10 plus rushing touchdown, 800 rushing yard. And then, the passing upside has increased now with AJ Brown in the fold. Now that's a second year with him. Devontae Smith going into his 3rd season, who we definitely think could be the best number 2 receiver in the NFL. I think personally he is. And then you also have Dallas Goedert, who missed a number of games last year, and Miles Sanders moves on in free agency. They have a little bit more influx in the backfield that could result in even more Jalen Hurts rushing production, rushing touchdowns. So these 3 guys, you want to spend a top 3 round pick, even a top 2 round pick on these guys. I honestly don't fault people. Again, if you are risk averse, you want to go Jamar Chase and Josh Allen, or Jamar Chase and Patrick Mahomes, or Justin Jefferson and Jalen Hurts at the end of your first 2 rounds, can't fault you at all. You said you had a 4th quarterback in this range. The reason I do not have Lamar Jackson here, which I'm assuming the quarterback that you're going to say, is because I think to be in a tier, you need to be able to make the argument that the 4th player in the tier is as good as the 1st player in the tier. So the reason I don't have Lamar Jackson up here is because I cannot make the argument that he's QB1.
Yeah, no, that's valid. I just read the headline as top 3 round picks, and I have Lamar Jackson in my top 36. But I would agree with you that there's a slight mini tier after those top 3 guys. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, all guys I have ranked at the 20 to 22 range. Lamar Jackson more so filling out the back end of my top 36. But with Lamar Jackson, although I would say the floor case is lower than any of those other top 3 quarterbacks, obviously we know Jalen Hurts' rushing output in the red zone is unmatched in terms of any other quarterback in the NFL. No other quarterback, I think, will threaten for 13 rushing touchdowns. So as good as Lamar Jackson is as a rusher, I think Jalen Hurts' ability to score touchdowns evens out the raw yardage total that Lamar Jackson might have an advantage. But why I'm so optimistic about the ceiling of Lamar Jackson potentially reaching back to 2019 heights is that this is a completely revamped offense. We're moving off of Greg Roman. We're moving off the archaic, run the ball 55% of the time type of days that Greg Roman was running over there in Baltimore. We're adding your boy. We're adding Todd Monken to the fold, obviously former Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator, recently had a successful stint winning 2 national championships in Georgia. You're adding him. You already expect inherently that the neutral pass rate is going to go up with this team. They added 2 really, really solid wide receivers, one via the draft of Zay Flowers, one via free agency with Odell Beckham. This offense, I don't think the public is ready to explode. But I think if you actually examine it, if you actually examine the trends, you examine the personnel, you examine the skill level of Lamar Jackson, a potential fringe top 5 level quarterback in the entire National Football League, it's easy to get excited. I think they can push to be a top 5 to 10 level offense, and Lamar Jackson will have his best touchdown luck in terms of passing output since his 2019 MVP season.
Yeah, I mean, like in that 2019 season, the run game was a 30-year-old Mark Ingram. He had Mark Andrews, who was in his second season, and he was throwing to like Sammy Watkins and like a bunch of rando wide receivers. I don't even remember who the wide receivers were that year. He has never had a cast of characters like this. And I'm actually going to make a change on the fly just in terms of what the names of the tiers are. I'm going to make these top 30 overall picks. So these guys are top of the third round, late second round type of assets. Move Lamar Jackson down to here and go top 50 overall picks is the way, because I absolutely do think there is a mini tier between these top two guys and Lamar Jackson. But I think if you kind of separate it this way, it makes a little bit more sense. So the other guy that I actually will have in my top 50 overall that would join Lamar Jackson in this tier is Joe Burrow, who's basically like the A- version of Patrick Mahomes, where you can book him in for 40 touchdowns or 35 touchdowns, 4,500 yards. This might be the swan song of the Jamar Chase T Higgins duo, because T Higgins is up for his contract next year. I think he'll get tagged if, worst case scenario, but they need to pay Joe Burrow. They need to pay T Higgins. Jamar Chase will be up for his contract pretty soon. I think this is the year. There might be some urgency with this Bengals team to win, to score points, to, shift this offense from one of, let's run Joe Mixon up the fucking A gap 20 times a game to we run through our passing game. And we did see a big time shift last year. The Bengals went from the 30th neutral game script pace in 2021 to a top 7 pace of play last year, which is extremely, extremely good for Joe Burrow in this passing game. It means that they trust their quarterback. It means that they're going to let him win games. And that's important, right? Even when they're down in games or up in games, they're going to throw. When you trust your quarterback, when the Chiefs are ahead in a game, they don't just like pound the clock out. They know that Patrick Mahomes is their best chance to generate first downs. He's not going to let the ball hit the ground and cause a bunch of incompletions to stop the clock. So I think Burrow and the Bengals have that same kind of mindset at this point in time with how Burrow has, matured as a quarterback. And for me, all 5 of these guys are guys that I'm absolutely happy anchoring my quarterback position to. I think all 5 of them are very easy 20 plus point per game projections. And if you're in any kind of passing bonuses league format like I'm in with Joe Burrow, he could actually have a real case to be potentially even ahead of Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson in that type of format, because he has pretty much every bit the passing touchdown and passing yardage ceiling that Patrick Mahomes has.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. Joe Burrow is a guy that I'll be targeting heavily, especially on teams that I have Jamar Chase or T Higgins selected in the first 3 rounds. So absolutely agree with you on Joe Burrow. Patrick Mahomes are probably the 2 safest bets to lead the NFL in terms of passing touchdowns, albeit maybe Josh Allen could be in that group right now because he's just a special player. He's got the rushing and the passing. But regardless, Joe Burrow, the passing ceiling's there, the offensive ceiling's there. No real debates there. A guy that I actually have ranked 1 spot higher than Joe Burrow, though. Listen, we're playing the game of fantasy football. We're not playing the real life NFL game, and you're on the wrong guy. You're actually the third guy over there. It's going to be Justin Fields for me. I understand if you're going to watch a football game and you're going to watch Joe Burrow and then watch Justin Fields, everybody in their right mind is going to say, well, Joe Burrow is just the much better real life quarterback. At the end of the day, I don't care how ugly it looks. If he's getting me fantasy points, that's all I really care about. And Justin Fields was extremely efficient at getting fantasy points last year. Averaged over 20 points per game last season as a whole in the 15 games he played on one of the lowest passing volume offenses in the entire NFL. They add a weapons group this offseason. DJ Moore obviously coming to the fold. Add a starting offensive tackle with Darnell Wright in the NFL draft. Justin Fields obviously entering his own as his 3rd year. Not to mention, in weeks 5 on, because in weeks 1 to 4, you could tell Bears offense really slow. Justin Fields really, really looked lost out there. I genuinely feel like he came into his own week 5 on as a pure playmaker, averaged over 24 fantasy points per game, was a legitimate league-winning level quarterback. And on top of that, you're getting a quarterback that is giving you running back level opportunity in the running game. 160 carries, over 1,100 rushing yards. Now, I think this is going to be a rebuttal. I do expect that to go down a little bit as they pass more inherently. But Justin Fields is a threat to carry the ball over 130 times. Justin Fields is a threat to rush the ball over 1,000 yards and 5-6 plus rushing touchdowns. If the passing game regresses to, I wouldn't even say Jalen Hurts level, even let's say 85% of what Jalen Hurts was last year, this could be a legitimate top 3 overall quarterback in fantasy football. And it's just someone, especially in 4-point passing touchdown leagues, that I don't want to miss out on.
I'm on the same page as you to some degree with Justin Fields, but I do come back to the fact that this guy had like numerous, like 6+ rush attempts of 40+ yards, which is really difficult to duplicate in the NFL. And as good as of an athlete as Justin Fields is, he barely cracked 20+ point per game on the whole season. Like you said, week 5 on, he was, over 24 points per game or whatever. But I do worry that this offense will not be nearly pass attempt friendly enough for him to get there. Like he could absolutely get there still from a rushing perspective, but I think you need to have some semblance of passing to keep an offense going, to score, top 15 points per game as an offense. And I think if they're the same kind of relative anemic offense that they were from a pass attempt standpoint and a passing volume standpoint, it's going to be really difficult for him to get there. I understand we're playing fantasy football, not real football, and he can run his way to a 20+ point per game season yet again. His offensive line has a little bit in flux. The deep ball attempts per game, way below the threshold that you need for an elite quarterback season, way below the ranking quarterback rating that you need for an elite season. The red zone attempts on the ground and through the air were encouraging, but the neutral pace in the pass offense, DVOA, he has to get better as a passer, in my opinion, or else we're basically banking on massive spike touchdowns again, or massive spike runs again. And it's just something I don't really want to do. And again, it goes back to what I said about Jalen Hurts, except it applies even more so to Justin Fields, is that teams kind of have a little bit more tape on him. They know that he's a run first quarterback. So if he can't evolve as a passer, if he can't develop anymore as a passer, then NFL defensive coordinators are going to keep him inside the pocket and try and make sure that he has to throw to win games. He just presents more risk to me than Joe Burrow and some of the guys that I have. I have 2 more guys ranked ahead of him in the next tier.
Wow.
So for me, Justin Fields, this is going to be our biggest disagreement for sure of the video, and I expected that going in. But for me, he does not belong in this tier. I think he presents more risk than Joe Burrow and any of the other kind of QBs going in this range. We can probably move right down to the next tier and talk about the next players. And I'll kind of make the case for my next rated quarterback, which is Justin Herbert. I don't know if this is the next guy that you have in line.
Yep.
For me, Justin Herbert, again, back to Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, you're just looking at a guy with an absolutely rock solid passing ceiling because of what the Chargers offense will represent. I think schematically is the biggest change that we're going to see from the Chargers offense. I heard Matt Harmon talking with Josh Norris on the Underdog show, basically talking about like the archaic scheme that the Chargers were running the past couple years, where it was like stick routes and, throwing to stationary receivers where there's no yards after catch ability. Dude, Kellen Moore is like, I mean, you're probably going to chime in with your own kind of schematic takes on how the Cowboys have looked, but the downfield opportunities, especially once you add a guy like Quentin Johnston into the mix, and hopefully Mike Williams is able to stay healthy and that kind of thing. I think Justin Herbert was built to play in this offense. If Kellen Moore was able to take, the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, who in my opinion, they have an inferior quarterback, probably a comparable weapons group. If he's able to take that offense and make it like basically a top 5 offense every year that he was the offensive coordinator, I'm just kind of imagining what he can do with Justin Herbert. A 700 pass attempt season out of Justin Herbert is very much possible. And when you're throwing that much to a group of weapons that I believe in, I'm going to be very excited about you. And it's the reason that I'm higher on Herbert than I am on Fields.
Yeah, no, the one quick rebuttal I do have is that it's funny that you basically described the Chargers offense when the main reason why the Cowboys did let go of Kellen Moore is a lot of stationary targets, a lot of stick routes, a lot of curl concepts, just not real imaginative in terms of yards after catch opportunity. However, like you said, when he did have the personnel in Dallas, he was much more willing to take shots down the field. I feel like the reason why the Cowboys devolved to that last year was mostly because outside of CeeDee Lamb, the weapons group was just terrible. Like the Cowboys weapons group outside of CeeDee Lamb last year consisted of Noah Brown, Michael Gallup on half an ACL in his fucking right, I don't know, left or right knee, whatever the one he tore, and Dalton Schultz, who people wanted to masquerade as this top 5 tight end talent, but now everybody kind of realizes he's just the definition of mid-pack. Yeah, no, Kellen Moore is a good offensive coordinator. I do have some question marks about what he does against elite defenses, but regardless, this is an upgrade for the Chargers, and I've made the case for Justin Herbert all summer. I'm glad you're on board with him as well. I am extremely high on him because, like you said, the volume alone is something to be excited about. He threw 699 pass attempts last year in the 17 games he played, and his starting wide receivers, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, both missed a collective, I think, between them 14 games. If those guys are healthy, now you're adding Quentin Johnson. Now you're adding an upgraded offense coordinator. I would not be shocked if he threw the ball 750 times this year, Tom Brady-esque back in 2021. Justin Herbert's got the ability. Justin Herbert's got the schematic opportunity. And Justin Herbert now has the personnel to be able to break fantasy football. I mentioned some of the names up top, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, the guys that are going to be potentially in the mix to lead the NFL in passing touchdowns. My sleeper is going to be Justin Herbert. He threw 38 touchdowns in 672 attempts last year, or 2 years ago, 25 in 699 attempts last year. If this is over 700 passing attempts, I think I made this call actually on stream that if he throws the ball over 650 times and throws less than 30 touchdowns this year, I will eat a sock. Because I just don't see that being a possible case, given this weapons group and given the potential volume we can see. Obviously, if he gets injured or whatever, that's a fucking different case. But if he's fully healthy and he's throwing over 650 pass attempts, you can basically lock in 30 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. And Slater being gone last year hurt the offense. The efficiency was down, and he himself was dealing with, I think, like a rib injury or something he suffered at the beginning of the season where he was kind of hobbled and he wasn't as mobile as he usually is as well. Another guy that I think is right in the mix with Justin Herbert is basically like Justin Herbert 2.0 with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, the comp that I had for Trevor Lawrence coming out of Clemson was Justin Herbert plus, because I think he actually does have a higher ceiling than Justin Herbert, because as good of an athlete as Justin Herbert is, Trevor Lawrence utilizes it more from a fantasy perspective. They ran Trevor Lawrence in the red zone and on bootlegs and that kind of stuff more in the Jaguars offense last year than Justin Herbert even does. So with the added weapons group, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, and Tank Bigsby, everybody has a role. Calvin Ridley's the possession number one wide receiver. Christian Kirk's going to move the chains as the slot guy, who obviously has shown last year that he has legitimate number two and number one receiver potential. And Zay Jones is a very capable number three at this point in his career. Evan Ingram just got a big contract. He can stretch the seam. And Travis Etienne can contribute out of the backfield, as can Tank Bigsby. And then you add in the fact that this offense was like top 5 in the league in pace of play, top 10 in the league in, neutral pass rate. The fact that Justin Herbert really didn't come on until the end of the season in his second year last year. He has his second season now in Doug Peterson's offense. He's got a lot of confidence coming off of that playoff performance against Justin Herbert's Chargers, where he led a huge comeback. So for me, I think Trevor Lawrence is my absolute dark horse MVP bet, that I think he could legitimately have a 40 touchdown, 5,000 yard season with 5 or 6 touchdowns on the ground. And that's going to get you a 23, 24 point per game season. And this is a guy that you can routinely get round 6, round 7 of your draft when you've already drafted 3 wide receivers, a running back, and an elite tight end, or whatever you start off your draft with. So I really, really love Trevor Lawrence as my kind of last chance to get the QB1 overall.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. This has been my next ranked quarterback as well. I believe he's currently my highest owned quarterback on Underdog Fantasy right now, because like you said, I love what the Jaguars were able to do from a weapons group perspective. We're both extremely high on Calvin Ridley. Apparently he's been absolutely shredding up in terms of their workouts together. Like, Trevor Lawrence has fallen in love with them. Obviously, that's going to be narrative-y, but that just kind of goes to show you that a guy who's been laid off basically the past, almost 2 years, because he only played 5 games 2 years ago. He's been off almost 2 years, and yet he still has got that ability. So we know that's going to be a factor. We know Christian Kirk was an 1,100-yard slot receiver last year. We know Evan Ingram was one of the best league-winning tight ends down the stretch last year. With all these weapons, and now Trevor Lawrence at the helm entering year 3, we could see a special season. 25 touchdowns in 17 games last year, and I think he got a lot of negative touchdown luck in that regard. If he gets back up to, 30, 35 plus passing touchdowns, and that rushing total stays the same at about 300 to 350 yards, 4 to 6 touchdowns, we could be looking at, like you said, a potential top 3 to 4 level quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Trevor Lawrence is no joke. He's the type of dude that I want to, he's pretty much the last, like I said, the last shot at like the quarterback overall one finish. Although I love this next guy, Deshaun Watson. I don't know if you have the same player ranked here, but I don't think he quite has the same ceiling as Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. I think he has like a top 5 ceiling, because we've seen him do it 3 times in his career already. But I do think that the Browns are going to be run heavy enough to the point that he doesn't quite have the same ceiling that Herbert and Lawrence do. He could make it up as a runner, because we've seen him, rush for like 500 yards and, a couple touchdowns here and there. But with Watson, you're looking at another situation. He's kind of just like the B plus version of Lamar Jackson, where with Watson, he has the best weapons of his career. Yeah, he doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins anymore, but Amari Cooper's a capable number one. We both believe wholeheartedly in Elijah Moore. If his head's on straight, he's a very capable number two receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones can stretch the field as a capable number three entering a contract year. David Njoku's a top 15, top 10 tight end talent in the NFL. And then you also have probably the best pure runner in the league and one of the best offensive lines. I believe PFF ranked them as the second best offensive line entering the 2023 season. Watson, if we recall back in Houston, he not only did not have a top three offensive line, he probably had a bottom three offensive line every year that he finished as a top five quarterback. So as long as his head's on straight and as long as he can get back to what he does best, which is put up fantasy points, then he is absolutely going to be one of the biggest values in fantasy football drafts, a guy that you can routinely get in round 8, round 9, after you already have your entire starting lineup and bench spots already filled pretty much. You can add Deshaun Watson as your quarterback to get real access to a top 5 ceiling.
Yeah, like he's a big boom bust play. I will say people are a little bit worried about how he played last year. That's fine, but the ceiling is inevitable. The ceiling is undeniable at this point. And if you're really, really worried about his floor, just take one of the guys in that round 9 to 11 area, whatever, whoever the cheapest one is, as your quarterback too, if you're really that worried. Because like you said, you need a quarterback that has access to a top 5 level ceiling. As bad of a season as Deshaun Watson had when he returned in the 6 games, he was still a guy that across a 17-game pace would have paced for over 100 carries and 500 rushing yards last year in the games he played. 36 rushing attempts, 175 rushing yards in the 6 games he played. Yeah, I mean, like this guy still got that rushing ceiling as long as we see some positive regression in the passing department because he was struggling last year once he came back, which was expected for a guy who hasn't played football in 2 years. I honestly think that if we're looking into the season, when we're looking into the ceiling projection for Deshaun Watson with this weapons group, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nick Chubb out of the backfield, this is the best weapons group Deshaun Watson has ever played with. And we've already seen him be the quarterback 5 3 years in a row in Houston. So I really don't see why, if he falls to the 6th round, 7th round, 8th round range, why he shouldn't be your quarterback 1 if you missed out on any of the guys above him.
Yeah, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence is your highest owned quarterback. Watson is my highest owned because I just constantly draft him backdoor, Elijah Moore, David Njoku stacks, and Donovan Peoples-Jones late on the draft. I think Deshaun Watson is a very, very good option, especially when you talk about the division too. If we think the Ravens are going to be good, if we think the Bengals are going to score points, if we think the Steelers might improve with Kenny Pickett, that division is going to be putting up points. And I really think that Watson has the ability to win that division. Even as good as the Bengals are and as good as I think the Ravens are, I think the Browns can be as good because they might have the best defense of those 3 teams. So I really do love Deshaun Watson. I think with this rounds 9 to 11 range, I'm going to throw up the quarterbacks that I have there to close up my top 15. And then let's debate back and forth on which ones you disagree with and see if you have anybody different. Does that sound good?
I have one more quarterback in this tier.
Well, I know it's Dak Prescott.
No, it's not.
Okay, who is it?
Anthony Richardson. You could put he's right there with them. And simply to me, obviously in a 6-point passing touchdown league, he would be in the tier below. But I do think that from a rushing perspective, this is the last guy that we could potentially bank on being a Justin Fields of last year level contribution. And Justin Fields of last year, I mean, like we kind of said, he was a little bit underwhelming as a passer. 17 passing touchdowns, 11 interceptions, only 318 pass attempts. I think those are doable numbers for Anthony Richardson because I do think that the supporting cast with Indianapolis, once you combine the factors of Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, Josh Downs added to the draft, and Shane Steichen coming in, who was able to unlock Jalen Hurts, I feel like all of those factors point to a ceiling that, simply put, all of the guys below him, in my opinion, your Dak Prescott's, Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa's, the guys below simply don't have access to. So for me, Anthony Richardson, I would prefer the guys above him in this tier. But if he falls to the 8th round, he's a guy I will consistently scoop and just pair with the guy from the previous or from the tier below. Because like I said, he's got the ability to rush for over 600, 700 rushing yards this year. He's got the ability to rush for over 7, 8 rushing touchdowns. And in 4-point passing touchdowns leagues, that's going to get you a mid-quarterback 1 finish.
Yeah, so I mean, I have my quarterback 13, so I probably need to poo-poo him a little bit right now. I'm not 100% convinced that he's going to start from the beginning, which is partially a concern that I have when you're talking about a guy who's literally in the same tier as Justin Herbert, who I think can finish as the
Definitely
quarterback
fair.
one overall. I can't get there with Anthony Richardson because Justin Fields' numbers is what I'm expecting as a passer. Am I expecting monstrous quarterback rushing record out of Anthony Richardson? He's got the capability, he's got the athleticism to do that, but is he going to break off long touchdowns like Justin Fields did last year? I don't want to bank on that for a rookie quarterback. I think it's difficult to say that, Anthony Richardson's going to do exactly what Justin Fields did last year. So for me, I think he has to be at least in a tier with the safer options. Yeah, if you, I agree with the strategy. You want to take Richardson first and then pair him with Kirk Cousins or pair him with Dak Prescott. 100% on board with that strategy. I just think he has to be in a tier with those guys because I can say confidently, like I think Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, and some of the guys in that area are like consistent quarterback 6 to 12 production, easy median projection.
For what it's worth, this tier is pretty scattered for me. So I actually have Justin Herbert inside my top 50, but I do think that those three guys from a tier perspective are a little bit above. So that's fine having him in the 6 to 8 tier, even though, again, he's my 47th ranked player right now. Trevor Lawrence at 54, Deshaun Watson at 68, and Anthony Richardson at 82. So although this is technically a tier based on where they're going in drafts around 6 to 8, I actually do have Anthony Richardson as a slight mini tier behind those guys. But I do think that the difference between Anthony Richardson and the quarterbacks below him, like I have Anthony Richardson at 82. My next rated quarterback after Anthony Richardson is ranked at 95, 97, and 98. So for what it's worth, he's in the round 6 to 8 tier, but he's closer to the guys in rounds 9 to 11 in my rankings.
Yeah, that's fair. So I'm gonna throw up my my rounds 9 to 11 to close up my top 15, just so that we get an idea of like who those players are, because I don't want to go too long on this video.
Agreed.
I have the next ranked quarterbacks as Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, Aaron Rodgers, and then there's a real there's nobody that I have like real conviction about between Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Geno Smith, even Kyler Murray, if you think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. The guy I have ranked here is Jared Goff because he has the best offense, in my opinion, of all the guys that I just mentioned. And I believe wholeheartedly in Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then maybe once Jameson Williams comes back, they open things up a little bit more. This is how I have it ranked. I actually have Richardson down here right after Dak Prescott is how I have it currently ranked. And then I have Fields down here with Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. So that's the differences in our rankings. Quickly on these like rounds 9 to 11 guys, if you're looking for a high pass attempt quarterback 6 to 12, both Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott profile perfectly. I actually do prefer Kirk Cousins a little bit because I love the weapons outlook. Maybe this changes if Jordan Addison's going to continue to be a knucklehead, but it sounds like he's not going to be suspended. I listened to Drew Davenport's legal update on him today, and he was like, I'd be stunned if he got suspended for that because there was no, jail time. There's no criminal case. Marquise Brown literally spent a night in jail last year and didn't get suspended for it for a similar speeding charge. So Kirk Cousins, to me, I'm not really all that worried about. I think he's going to have the wide receiver one in fantasy throwing that he's throwing the ball to, a top 5 tight end in fantasy that he's throwing the ball to. Dak Prescott, basically just 95% of Kirk Cousins. I think his weapons group's a little bit worse, and I think the Vikings might throw the ball quite a bit more. And Dak Prescott has to share some touchdown opportunity with Tony Pollard, whereas I don't really believe wholeheartedly in Alexander Mattison. I think they're going to throw the ball more than the Cowboys in the red zone. And then when it comes to Tua, Aaron Rodgers, and Jared Goff, I'm kind of just I don't think either three of those quarterbacks will be super, super high volume pass attempt quarterbacks that like are totally leading their offenses. But I do think all of them are going to be extremely efficient and all of them have weapons that can help carry them, especially in Tua's case with Waddle and Tyreek. They can break off those long plays, give him those huge spike weeks. Aaron Rodgers, we know what he can do at this point in his career. He's a distributor. He's going to get the ball to the guys that are open. Garrett Wilson's going to be his main target. And then Jared Goff, they're going to run the ball a lot in the red zone, which definitely hurts Jared Goff. And if you want to lean the upside of a Russell Wilson, if Sean Payton can kind of help fix him, I just lean on the fact that he's going to lead a top 10 offense, and I want the architect of that.
Yeah, I will quickly slightly rebuttal on the 95% of Kirk Cousins' point because I actually do have Dak one spot higher. Again, these guys are pretty similar in terms of their outlook. You're expecting, 30, potentially even 35 plus passing touchdowns in their ceiling range of outcomes, but you kind of realize, given their limited rushing ability, that it's probably going to be capped at like a quarterback 5 ceiling, even if they throw for that many touchdowns. So I think they're very, very safe. I think they really project as the same player in fantasy. And if there were any guys outside of the, round 6 to 8 range and above that I can book as being a quarterback one, it would be these two. So I do agree that rank them in the order you want. I have Dak at first, Kirk Cousins after him, but I do think it's fair to have them in either order, and I do think it's fair to have them at the top of this tier. In terms of Dak Prescott, I quickly will make the case for him because this is a guy that in the past 4 years has been on pace for over 40 or 30 passing touchdowns each of the last 4 seasons. Obviously, he did it in 2019. 2020 got hurt in injury, can't really take much out of that season. But even the past 2 years, 37 passing touchdowns in 16 games in 2021, 23 in the 12 games he played in 2022. So for Dak Prescott, I do think that this is the best weapons group he's worked with realistically since that 2020 season before he got hurt. Not to mention, Dak Prescott is going to be fully recovered from that thumb injury. I do feel like that was some of the issue with his turnover luck last year. Uncomfortable with the thumb coming back. Obviously, a lot of touchdown. Obviously, a lot of turnover regression on the way, a lot of unlucky interceptions last year. But like you said, he doesn't really have the highest ceiling because that rushing ability that he showed early career, that 300 plus rushing yard, 5 plus rushing touchdown ceiling, simply doesn't exist anymore after that ankle injury he suffered a few years ago. So he's safe. He's a quarterback 1, but I wouldn't be comfortable with him as my only quarterback without another guy with a lot of upside.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I mean, to your point about pacing for 30 touchdowns, Kirk has done it in 5 straight seasons. And also, last year was the first time he's thrown over 600 pass attempts since 2018. So Kevin O'Connell coming in was a big time upgrade to their pass attempts. And the opposite happened in Dak Prescott's case where Kellen Moore leaves. I still think they're going to be a pass heavy team, but maybe not to the extent they were with Kellen Moore leading the offense. So those 2 guys, throw them in a hat, whatever one you prefer. And then, like we said, Tua, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff. Do you have anybody that belongs mentioning here or ranked higher than the ones that I have?
Well, I actually have a different ranking. So 2 of those 3 guys are in my top 15. I'll let you guess which one isn't.
I'm guessing that it's Goff.
It is Goff. The guy that I have supplemented for Goff is going to be Daniel Jones. And I mean, for what it's worth, they both kind of represent ceiling cases on the different perspective. Obviously, Jared Goff is, if we mention, Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott are like, 30, 35 plus passing touchdowns, elite real life, pocket passers in terms of their potential fantasy output. Jared Goff's like 85, 90% of that, where we can kind of expect him to throw, 26 plus passing touchdowns. We can kind of expect this Detroit offense to be, while, a top 10 offense, quite not the ceiling that I think the Vikings or the Cowboys represent. But I mean, Jared Goff, for what it's worth, should be able to put up that type of point production. Whereas with Daniel Jones, it's kind of like the opposite case where we don't really expect much from this Giants offense. We don't really expect much from his overall throwing output, but the rushing ability should be able to buoy a top 10 overall finish. And if he does regress positively, I mean, this is a guy that in his rookie season did throw 24 passing touchdowns, has not crossed 15 in the last 3 seasons. Even if he gets closer to, the 20, 25 touchdown range, which may be a big ask, but I've seen crazier things happen from a young quarterback with a better weapons group. Darren Waller gets added to the fold. Obviously, Wan'Dale Robinson coming back from injury. They add in Isaiah Hodgins in terms of late breakout last year. Saquon Barkley, if he does play, that is a big question mark. If Saquon Barkley doesn't play, I'm comfortable putting Goff over Daniel Jones. But assuming Saquon Barkley plays, I do think that this is going to be the best weapons group Daniel Jones has worked with since his rookie season. So for me, I do have him in this top 15, but I do understand the rationale for having Jared Goff.
Yeah, and I think Russ definitely deserves mentioning. If Sean Payton can fix him, he's definitely going to be a guy that's like on par with Aaron Rodgers in terms of their outlook. Geno Smith had a pretty good season. He's kind of just like a worse version of Jared Goff to me, at least as far as his outlook is concerned, because I believe more in Goff's offense, just from the coaching perspective. And then also Kyler Murray, if he's going to be ready early on in the season, he's like the type of guy you pair up with a Kirk Cousins or a Dak Prescott if you're looking for more of a ceiling play. We know that he can run, and even if he's coming off an ACL tear, it didn't really affect Deshaun Watson the year after his. So I would expect that that Kyler Murray is still a rushing threat, even coming off of a blown knee. So that is our quarterback rankings, basically our quarterback landscape. What else do you got to say? Do you have anything else?
I just want to give a shout out to Matt Stafford as well. He's another top 20 option that I think was on the fringe of this list, but the unfortunate nature of Matthew Stafford is he's coming back from that elbow injury. We don't exactly know how he's going to be, but I'm just going to give a slight benefit of the doubt that when he was healthy back 2 years ago, I mean, they were the Super Bowl champions and he was a 41 passing touchdown quarterback. So it would not shock me if he was fully healthy and that rapport with Cooper Kupp did redevelop, that he could potentially be, a top 12 level option in fantasy. So just want to give him a little shout out.
Yeah, I mean, actually, with you mentioning Stafford, that is the top 20 quarterbacks. Everybody that we've talked about in this video makes up my top 20 quarterbacks. So we promised you 15. We gave you 20. Hopefully you enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, comment any of your thoughts down below. Who are your biggest quarterback targets? Who's anybody that we missed? If you want to comment that. And then also make sure if you want our full rankings, Dynasty, Redraft, Superflex, Rookie, whatever 2024, we have those live on the site as well. Check out flockfantasy.com and use the promo code FSE for 30% off, a 6 months for free if you sign up annually, as well as a free Zoom consultation with myself or with Danny, whichever you prefer. Definitely check that out. Link will be down below in the description. Take some of this advice into action on Underdog Fantasy as well, and use the promo code FSE for 100% back up to $100. So if you put in $10, you have $20 on the site to play with. You can get in some puppy drafts right now, get some exposure to these players, sharpen up your skills for your home league drafts that I'm sure you guys care a ton about. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.